Oh, I've switched myself off.
Knowing what client wants from a competency perspective has really given me some fantastic leverage to support candidates who are looking for work. So, I mean, especially this year, we did a huge drive in terms of helping the community by upskilling them with free resources and just support and coaching and mentoring, and how to seek employment or how to make employment, how to make some money, how to hustle, given our current set of circumstances. So that's holistic, psychometric assessments, but also a lot of professional things like personal branding, CVs, LinkedIn, coaching, and yeah, anything that makes our heart beat a little bit faster.
It works. So where does the name holistic come in? I mean, it's obviously holistic in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I was just like, let me make up. But no, there was in my madness in that I wanted to own page 1 of Google, which I now do. And so I made up the name that wouldn't be confused with somebody or something else. And yes, it is a derivative of holistic, because my whole ambition towards, in fact, anything in life is I think you've got to have such a holistic, integrative approach, whether it be dieting. It's not just about popping some pills or just going to the gym and eating all you want. It doesn't work like that, but it's being holistic in your approach, managing, gyms, food, water intake, sleep, stress, all of those good things. So generally, I mean, even in my parenting approach, I try and be integrative. And yeah, from a business perspective as well, I like to take on the big picture.
I get the sense that there's a wonderful energy that you exude, and it has happened each time I've spoken to you, each time I've met you. And really, I'm curious to find out, is that a choice you make intentionally every day?
So it's yes and no. I think a large portion of it is my personality. Yeah, I've got memories of people, school teachers saying, "Cheapers, can you stop smiling?" But just like you and I and everybody else listening to this webinar, Robyn, I too have been through challenges, not just this year. And I've been challenged to, you can either get down in the dumps and get really sad about atrocities or things that happen to your family, or you can choose to see, how did I learn from this? How did I grow? What's the silver lining? So a very large chunk of it is making that progressive choice to move forward each day. That very popular connector that you alluded to earlier, he has such a beautiful metaphor. He said, when you're taking off in an aircraft, you don't have a rearview mirror because it's about moving forward. So yeah, it's about making that choice every day to progressively move forward.
That's wonderful. And I think, whilst you say your challenges haven't only been in the last 7 months, even if that was so, I think everybody has been faced with some degree of introspection and some challenges, whether it's financial, political, economic. We're going through stuff at the moment. And I'm quite interested to see how us emotionally intelligent human beings actually come out of this. And I think my question to you is, are we going to be how do we make sure that we're not a society of post-traumatic stress disorder patients in this time next year?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, yeah, sticking with the theme of an integrative approach, I think it's not just up to us. I think we've got to collaborate, not just from a community perspective, but from a government, private perspective as well. I mean, Robyn, one of the biggest concerns that I have in South Africa is, I mean, obviously there's been pluses and minuses with our lockdown, and we're not going to get into a debate around that because they are, the good and the bad. But I think a lot of focus was placed on the more concrete issues, such as, you've got to wear masks, and you've got to lock down, and you've got to do this and that, and curfews, and no cigarettes and booze and blah, blah, blah. But the intangible issues such as mental health and support and mentoring and those sorts of things, there hasn't been a lot of attention paid towards that. Yeah. Now, when you look at other countries, for example, in the United Kingdom, they've got what they call their support bubbles. So although they have now just, in fact, Thursday this week, they are going to be instigating their heavy lockdown. Even in their heavy lockdown, they are allowing people that live by themselves to become part of a support bubble with other households, meaning that they can visit each other or go to the park together. So it's just one example of one country that is really paying attention to what is the mental health impact on society. And I wish that we as South Africa were doing more. In terms of holistic, we tried. I think we definitely made some waves in terms of our radio interviews and our TV interviews, in terms of, hey, listen, if you're feeling like this, these are the resources out there. This is who you need to speak to. Here are the toll-free numbers. But I wasn't, I don't know about you, maybe you disagree with me, but I wasn't getting that message.
No, I agree. And I think what we have seen is that if you went into the lockdown slightly miserable, you've come out of it probably really sad or really depressed. So I think it just exacerbated any of the emotions that we had.
Absolutely.
So I was interested, just reading on your bio, that it's a very full prospect of connections and that. But the one thing that was really touched me was that the scope of your work is very broad, and it even extends to being an expert on LinkedIn. And I think that just seems to be, for me, relevant. And perhaps the question, why do you see it as being such an important platform?
So, as I mentioned, Robyn, initially the business started with psych assessments, gave us some beautiful leverage in terms of what client looks for. And I mean, not a lot of people are in the candidate's corner. Okay. I mean, if you think of recruiters, at the end of the day, the recruiter's working with the clients. That's the person that's paying their retainer or set amount. So who's actually in the candidate's corner? And this is it was my conundrum. Anyway, that's how we instigated our personal branding options. And within that, we encompass CVs and LinkedIn. Now, you just have to look at the way in which the world is moving, and perhaps I don't know if it's in disguise, but coronavirus has really been the instigator to push us into Industry 4.0. Now, when we look at employment opportunities, when we look at work, when we look at careers, when we look at what to study in terms of our kids, Industry 4.0 is an environment that allows us to employ multiple strategies. So from a LinkedIn perspective, I mean, if you do not have some sort of digital presence, I mean, you might as well go to networking events in your pajamas with no business card. It's not good for your brand. So, I mean, 21st century, Industry 4.0, if you're not on LinkedIn, in my opinion, you are committing career suicide.
Right. So even as an individual, so the audience that you're talking to today are all employed, and some of them may well be self-employed on a contractual basis, but they all have work right now. Now, they work for a brand. So how does an individual who works for a big brand, what should they be promoting? I mean, is there anything other than motivational messages and dogs and cats that you can, how much of that can you put on? And I get so irritated when I see that on LinkedIn, I must tell you. But yeah.
This is not Facebook or Instagram. Oh my goodness. Look, I mean, the most important thing to remember is you're absolutely right. If you are formally employed or even contracted to a big company, you've got to be projecting those values of that particular brand. So it's so important that your personal brand is in sync with that. I mean, you don't want to be projecting a brand of, let's say, I don't know, fun party girl, these sorts of things, and you're contracted to a bank, where it's all about an ethical, honest approach. So we've got to be so cognizant that our personal brands have got to marry into the organizational brands that we find ourselves either employed by or contracted.
Yeah. it's critical, and so often we actually see those people who are really unhappy in the work that they do. Very often there is that disconnect between them and the organization that they represent from a value perspective. So 100%. And I will just say, though, that as much as things have been difficult for the rest of the world, I can promise you that my bank manager probably loses sleep when he looks at my account every day, or when she looks at my account. So, and I do have those moments, I'll be very honest with you, where I've actually yearned to be employed again. Not only for the paycheck, but just for the company, just because, you know, you're all going in the same direction, and for that community that you work with and work for, and who works with you. So a couple of months ago, I kind of reached a bit of a point, and I thought, no, it's enough now. I'm going to look for this. And I began that little journey. And I must just tell you that if I was ever doubted being employed again, Marzenna, that was the day that I realized that it would not actually ever be possible. Because when you go onto LinkedIn looking for jobs, and that the recruitment process has changed so dramatically. You know, gone are the days you went in and met somebody and were able to exude your personality. Now it really is, it's vastly different. I think you've got to get through an online application. If your words don't match the words in the job spec, the artificial intelligence used, it really, and there's no way of you speaking to anybody. So you can go through a checklist. It must be really, really difficult for people, for candidates looking for work, especially if they're over a certain age and people call them a silverback for short. So, I mean, are missing something in this whole, have we not depersonalized that process too much?
Look, I hear what you're saying. You're absolutely right. Things have become very much automated. We use what we call ATS, which is your automatic tracking software, in terms of actually matching the candidate to a role. So let's just for a second imagine the recruiter's position, if you had to put yourself in his or her shoes. And I mean, fielding, it's not just hundreds, it is thousands of CVs, okay? So, I mean, in the spirit of progression, I mean, if we look at Fordism, it was so amazing when we looked at the first Fords, but I mean, to today's automobiles, you know, there's a vast difference. So progression is good. It really is. And I think the tactics employed in 2020 really do serve us in terms of shaving off costs, you know, in terms of manpower, scanning those CVs. It makes the process a lot more efficient, a lot more scientific, because you're measuring certain things. And with that, I hear your argument in terms of depersonalizing, but let's quickly go through the process, and then I want to challenge that notion. So, you know, it's not rocket science. In fact, I did an interview on 5FM. I was very provocative with my title, saying, do not hire a professional CV writer, you know, although I am one. Because sneaky, it's like, I'll teach you everything you need to know, but if you need someone, I'm your gal. But in essence, the process is not that complex. It's really about knowing a couple of good pointers, and those good pointers in a nutshell is, do not go over 2 pages with your CV, keep it comprehensive, keep it succinct, speak in third person. You've got to write with action words. So it mustn't be your operational, I did X, Y, Z. It should be championed X, Y, Z and achieved a 47% increase in revenue. You really got to demonstrate what you've done and what you've achieved, okay? So if you can encompass that style, then what you've got to do is look at the job description, or the JD as we call it for short. You look at those key competencies and you make sure that those keywords are reflected in your CV, okay? So it's not a case of copy and pasting. It's a case of, you know, you should at least know how to execute such competency. But if there is a match, then certainly put those keywords in, because, I mean, there's been fantastic talent that's been lost in these processes because they're not following this advice. So from that sense, I mean, that really is all it is. Maybe it sounds complex, maybe it doesn't, but anybody can do it, I assure you. But if you can't, hire me. But let's talk about the depersonalization that you speak about, Robyn. And you know what, life has become, I think, Africa, but abroad as well, so competitive in terms of not just getting that goal, but getting that consulting position. And what I find is, again, a holistic approach in terms of the strategy. So it's all about marketable, okay? Hashtag. It's not just about having, you know, a black and white CV that's going to pass through the bots. You've got to make an impact and employ things like social media. So just a few moments ago, you know, you spoke about news feeds full of cats and dogs and those fun things on LinkedIn. But what I would encourage people to do, and I understand a large majority of your audience are perhaps employed or consultants or perhaps looking for gigs. But in terms of that personal brand, is publishing credible content. Okay, now people think, oh, who's going to want to listen to me? Like, I don't have anything to say. I can assure you, you are unique. You've got a unique set of skills. You've got a unique set of experiences, life, passions, talents. It's really just finding that niche, and hopefully it aligns to what you're doing professionally. Otherwise, what are you doing? Assessments. But really just creating that content around your brand and sharing it on things like LinkedIn. Becoming a thought leader in your arena. Okay, I've got some great examples where there was a Swedish designer in Johannesburg, and he earmarked this particular company that he really wanted to work for. So what he did, it cost him absolutely nothing except a little bit of his time, is he created an Instagram account. And I can't remember the guy's name, but let's say he wanted the attention of Ahmed. He created the account called Ahmed Look at Me. And what he did was he took a couple of pictures and had little sexy slogans in terms of what he could do for Ahmed's business. And guess what? He got the interview, and after that, he got the job. So it's about looking at ways to personalize it once again, Robyn. So, you know, how do we forge that human connection? Getting the CV through is one part. You're not going to, all you need to do is get your CV to get to somebody's desk, because the real sales encounter of selling yourself, it's a human engagement. Okay, that's what people are orientated towards. So look at ways of standing out, look at ways of being remarkable, being a thought leader in your field. You know, there's some other tactics that another person employed in terms of dropping off. He really wanted this job, okay? So he dropped off a prosthetic leg in a cooler box covered in tomato sauce. And this is a true story, I'm not making it up. And he wrote a note saying, I would give an arm and a leg to just interview for this role. And guess what? He got the interview. Yeah. So if there's one thing that you've heard from all of these funny stories, is remarkable. Don't just be the average. Don't do what everybody's doing. Think of ways to really position yourself and to stand out.
Yeah. And I love that. And it obviously ties back into your LinkedIn profile, because if your LinkedIn profile is weak and an employer receives your CV or receives your application and they have any chance go look at your CV or your LinkedIn, obviously that's it lets you down a little bit. I used to sell pharmaceutical drugs, and
goody.
Yeah, no, I was a drug dealer, and an English-speaking sales rep in a very Afrikaans area, and I had to get my product crossed over into that market. And it was amazing because they all remembered me because ek was die Engelse vrou wat daar kom. And it was hysterical because I used to try my broken Afrikaans and do my best. And I realized that very early on in my days of selling that it doesn't matter how they remember you, obviously for all the right reasons, but as long as they remember you. And it got to the point we actually got quite matey, and they used to call me Robyn. So yeah, I really buy into that. I had never thought of how it had transgressed into the new age of technology. So your examples are fantastic. So again, you're talking today to people who hold very senior positions. They lead teams of people that have got huge responsibilities on their shoulder. They manage exorbitant budgets, and hopefully they're going to start managing them well in the future when we all start flying again. And I have no doubt that all of them have been in some way or other involved in making a really difficult decision, and usually about one of their team members or a team of theirs that they've had to either put on furlough them or make them redundant or whatever the consequence was. I worry about them as well. I think it's one thing, and in the reverse is that here we have worried a lot about the employees that we've had to counsel through the process. But the people who are doing the actions, those decisions have also affected them. And I worry about them. I mean, I do know that half of our delegates calling in today are crazy, but I don't want them any more crazy than they are today. What are we doing with that group of leaders?
Yeah, so I just want to bring it home, in fact, Robyn, and I hope he doesn't mind. I won't mention any names, but my dear husband is also in quite a senior role. And, he's very resilient in the work environment, good interpersonal skills, very resilient. But I've never quite seen him been so impacted by having to put his team on furlough. So I feel for senior management, because you're right, who is there for them? I think the advice that I'd like to give them, Robyn, is, just to act with a balanced approach in terms of making those business decisions to preserve bottom line, but just staying human with it, just trying to exercise or elevate that emotional intelligence, being supportive, and also taking a step back and reflecting and saying, hey, actually, I'm human as well. Speaking about those emotions. I know sometimes it's not, I don't know, conducive. You don't want to dwell on the negative, but really do trust your inner circle, whether it be your partner or your best friend or a therapist or somebody to just talk to as well. I mean, I was reached out to by a very senior, this guy's got a PhD, he's got his doctorate in, I think it was engineering, and he was the owner of a steel organization. And he said to me, I'm struggling. So if I'm struggling, how are my guys feeling? I don't have energy anymore. So, take some time, pause, reflect, introspect, and it certainly doesn't make you weak to reach out for help, whether it be, like I said, somebody you trust or someone professional. In fact, that's what takes guts and bravery.
Yeah, it really is. It's very sad. So on the one side, we've become very adept at redundancy, and I think that let's hope that wave is over and we can move into the next wave, which will no doubt happen, and that is the wave of retrenching, because recruiting. So as much as we've been redundant, we are also going to have to replace shortly. So, and I think, the process may be different, and you outlined how it's done now, but I think from our perspective, should we be approaching the process as differently? And I'm interested to hear from you, when the need is initially identified, what should we be doing?
So let's perhaps talk from an organizational perspective, and then let's talk from the individual perspective as well, because I know our audience, as much as they represent a brand, they're also representing themselves and, looking at decisions that are going to impact their own livelihoods. From an organizational perspective, Robyn, if we look at the businesses that have probably been the most resilient during the pandemic, it's those that are lean, that are agile, and have been able to keep their costs as low as possible. Now, as you possibly know, the highest expenses in business is your staff as well as your rent. Okay, so the businesses that employ the services of consultants such as you and I, those ones that have the agile and lean methodologies, have actually coped really, really well. So from an organizational perspective, I would challenge them to look at their methodologies, look at their processes, look at the way in which the business is structured, and look at utilizing those tactics, give them that resiliency into the future. Because viruses, we're still gonna face more challenges, not more, but different ones in the next 5, 10, 20 years. We don't know what the future holds. Okay, and it might not be virus related. It might be something else. I don't even know what that is right now. And from an individual perspective, people probably think, oh my goodness, I'm so scared because if it's become even more lean and more reliant on automation, where does that leave me? But I think it's a case of don't be fear driven. Take a step back, introspect, do a skills audit, and as I mentioned earlier, look at your niche, because that's where the pot of gold is at the end of the rainbow. Okay, that is your differentiator. That is your unique selling point, is your unique skills that you can offer. Okay, so point one, look at those skills and look at what does that look like in Industry 4.0. If you are doing anything that can be automated, that is repetitive, that is operational, you are in danger. Okay, if your job, however, requires you to encompass competencies such as problem solving, creative thinking, strategic thinking, emotional intelligence, interpersonal skills, you are in the safe zone. So I challenge you, whatever sector you're in, is to move into an area where you can demonstrate those competencies just measured. And point two, and this goes for, I don't care if you're 20 or if you're 75 and you're still working, but always have a plan B, okay? Whether that be growing your organic tomatoes in your backyard or taking photographs, always have a plan B, because you never know when you're going to need it.
Mm. No, well said. And I think we've all learned that in the last 7 months, and some of us have had to scramble around and find that plan B. As an employer, if I was recruiting people now, I think, I'm sure you would add to this, but I think one of the things that we always have to do is just understand that the work that needs to be performed, and if it can be automated or outsourced, maybe you don't need to recruit a full-time head in that position. But if you do, make sure that you are requesting, or you're looking for the skills that you need today, not the skills that you needed a year ago. And I think from my perspective, going into profiling, I mean, my most successful roles that I've ever appointed people, I had profiled the job that I was looking for. I had said the perfect person for this job would be able to do, and then completed one of the profiling applications, and then was able to match the top candidates into that profile. And I must tell you that throughout my career, the most successful appointments I've ever made have been ones that have done those assessments up front. And is that what we should be doing as employers or as people recruiting for positions within the organization?
Robyn, I think I'm going to come and recruit you to be my sales lady. No, look, I mean, it's not a sales pitch. What you're saying is 100% truth, because you've been in that situation. So, there's a whole debate, fairy tale versus scientific recruitment. Now, when you're talking about just doing an interview, or perhaps having a really good feeling about someone, or any of those methods, that's a fairy tale method. There's no measurable science behind that, okay? I can't tell you how many of my clients have said that they've been taken for millions of rands because in that interview, they just had such a good feeling and they were so devastated that their gut let them down. I mean, sorry, not sorry, it's the truth, but generally more attractive people perform better in the interview process. Because we make an impression that's unconscious in less than a second. People that have stronger verbal articulation or verbal reasoning skills have an 80% better chance of landing a role, irrespective of if they can do it or not. Okay,
Yeah.
so these are non-scientific methods of employment, and they are costly if you make the wrong choice. So moving forward, I would encourage employers to consider measurable ways in which to recruit. As you mentioned, what you said is more scientific in terms of profiling that role. There's various different techniques that one can employ. Obviously, you know, being the psychometric expert, I can't sing its praises enough in terms of choosing a person that's, you know, it's not just about competency, Robyn, but I mean a person that fits the culture. You know,
Okay.
if you don't have motivation to want to do a job, you can have all the brains and all the skills, strategic complexity in the world, but if you don't gel with those people, it's a mismatch. Okay, so I think a lot of employers get a little bit allergic to the 10,000 per candidate that they've got to cough up for that assessment battery initially. And these guys are paying up to 20% of the gross annual salary of that candidate to their recruiters. The recruiters that are not always employing scientific tactics. So yeah, I would definitely encourage big business to look at ways in which to measure the success or the competency level of the candidate to the job role.
No, it really is important. And I think particularly as we evolve. So you know, I'm thinking of it from a travel management company perspective. We employ people because they've got 10 years, 20 years experience in travel. Are those the skills we need today, you know, with the automation? So it's an interesting conversation. We should probably unpack it a bit further as an industry. What do you think the year 2021 is looking like for the people industry?
Whew, which country? Well, globally.
Southern Africa.
Sure. So South Africa in 2021. Robyn, I don't want to be sort of, as you know, I'm a very optimistic person, but I do look at 2021 with some trepidation. Business Insider has projected that we could sit at a 50% unemployment rate. So, you know, we can get all scared and filled with doom and gloom, but I would like to encourage your audience to take heed of this advice, in that we spoke about lean, agile businesses earlier, and the converse is true. We're seeing, not just in South Africa, in fact, South Africa is a little bit behind with this, but in fact, the US as well as the UK, there's just been this incredible trajectory of consultants, okay? The gig economy is becoming more and more popular. And I think where South Africans, the individuals that perhaps themselves unemployed by no choice of their own, will be forced into the gig economy. And as South Africans, we are extremely attractive in terms of our skill sets. It's between us and India, right? Because our English is very good, we're very educated, we've got strong skill sets. And there's a plethora of resources and websites out there which you can actually showcase your skill sets, whether it be anything from administration to coaching to design to anything really. So although I look at 2021 with trepidation in terms of people, I want to encourage those people that find themselves in situations that they didn't choose. Don't feel hopeless. We're South Africans. We have tenacity. We have resilience. We're intelligent. We're a fantastic bunch of people. There are certainly platforms that we can utilize to capitalize on earning an income. It doesn't even have to be South African based. So the gig economy is here. Don't be afraid of it.
Yeah, I'm in it, and it is. It's not easy, but you're right. It doesn't matter how good you are at doing the work. You have to be able to promote yourself. So, and that's the second biggest challenge. Marzenna, what does 2021 look like for you personally?
Woo! I've got goosies. I'm so excited about 2021. Absolutely terrified So the reason that I am so discrepant in my emotions is I'm actually going to be leaving my dear, beautiful South Africa, whom I absolutely love. I feel quite emotional about it. South Africa is my birthplace. I was born in Johannesburg. I grew up in a little township called Soweto. You might have heard of it. People think I'm absolutely crazy when I say that, but it's God's honest truth. My mom was a dietitian at Baragwanath Hospital, and my most memories, my juvenile memories, are playing with the kids in Doctor's Res in Soweto. So yeah, I've traveled across beautiful Africa, spent some time in Cape Town, and it's time for a new chapter. So my family and I are off to the United Kingdom. And yeah, I'm terrified. Who moves during a global pandemic? Me. But I'm very, very excited at the opportunities that it's going to afford, not just my husband, not just my son, but myself as well. Because Robyn, if there's one thing that I have learned is you only know what you know. So if you open up or pour out of your cup, you empty that cup, you then create space to fill it with new knowledge and new experiences. So I'm so excited to go and to learn and to travel Europe and to visit my beautiful, dear, sweet South Africa.
Well, listen, all I can say is it's not even about luck. I just wish you well, and I wish you safe time, and keep that energy bounding out of you. And I have no doubt that you will just go from strength to strength. I know you'll still keep ties in South Africa, and your business will still operate out of South Africa. And I'm sure anybody needs to get hold of you, they certainly can. But Marzenna, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and for sharing. And yeah, take care and be well.
Thank you, Robyn. It's been an absolute honor chatting to you today. Mwah!
Thank you.